hold hands and close your eyes. It's midnight, and you're listening to the Ghost Story Guys. Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys. I'm Brandon Storr.
I'm Paul Bestall.
And this is a show where we talk about spooks, specters, and all the other things watching us from the shadows beyond the campfire. Some conversations only make sense after the sun has set, and this is most definitely one. This is episode 178. And as always, we're coming to you from that tiny mountain cabin you dream about, but can never quite reach. Paul, I'm glad this is the Christmas episode, man. This is rough.
Hello and welcome from the 1980s. Hi there.
Yeah. Paul's not going to be making any quick quips on this show because he has no internet at his house and is making his appearance via the magic of cell phone. So, how you doing, my friend?
I'm all right. We're just I'm very fortunate because after watching Evil Dead Rise the other week, I've been practicing opening and unlocking the door with my left hand just in case my right hand ever got cut off by a zombie or something. So I think I've been preparing myself for a day like today where modern technology has left us, and pretty soon the neighbours will be bursting in and eating each other by 1 o'clock, I suspect.
Well, as long as it happens after we're done recording, that's fine. We are, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. We're not going to be doing stories on this show because 1, it's Christmas, 2, the internet, and 3, we have a guest who we just want to hang out with.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. Kev Eustace, host of We Need to Talk About Ghosts, the Dark Paranormal, and now the Deadly Countdown, our favorite third ghost story guy. I'm sure this is a dubious honor for him. But yes, Kev is here, so we're just going to hang out. We're going to talk spooky things. We're going to talk about the world at large. This is going to be a big, rambling, messy episode of the Ghost Story Guys, and I am really, really excited for it. So, we are going to pause to get our shit together here. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, I will say we will be thanking our patrons on episode 179. And of course, shout out to our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. Rainy Days for Ghosts is a project of film journalist and musician Jerry Smith. You can find more from him at rainydaysforghosts.bandcamp.com or by searching for Rainy Days for Ghosts or Street Witch on streaming platforms everywhere. Don't forget that our very first soundtrack is out. You can get Ghost Story Guys Season 6 on Spotify and I believe now on Apple Music, yeah. And it should be going out to all the other streaming platforms very soon. Again, that is music from Season 6 of the Ghost Story Guys, all of it composed by Rainy Days for Ghosts. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to a conversation that is, quite frankly, already in progress. The soul of the Ghost Story Guys is like hanging out with your favorite internet uncles. You are now on with 3 of your favorite internet uncles, and we're not drinking, although you'd think it from the way the conversation has gone.
You really would.
It might actually be better if we were. You caught us right in the middle. We were talking about Indian cinema, of all things. If you're coming in here for ghost content, guys, keep looking. Go to the back catalog. Like it might come up at some point, but that is not the primary focus of tonight's conversation.
No. So, I was just saying then, like 20 years ago when I lived in my dad's, on satellite TV there was an Indian TV station called Star. Sure, it was called Star. And anyway, the TV programs, they used to, amazingly, because the thing is, this is not mockery, because the everyone outside of English-speaking countries speak several languages. They're just much more, the polyglots, if you like, the better, the more arsed about learning other languages. And they would do these programs where like half would be in Indian and half would be in English, but they'd mix halfway through a sentence. and it was like, and you'd be thinking you'd be following. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like, I think I know what's going on, but there'd always be a hysterical thing, which I'd found hysterical. But you know, when somebody gets something wrong at the end of a sentence, so for example, they'd say, "It was you, haven't it?" And you'd be like, "What? Did I?" And I'd rewind it and be like, he did say that. And then that was me then for about 4 years. I'd be in the pub, and anytime something had happened, I'd be like, "I watch you do that, aren't I?" And things like that. It became, it just became something I found really funny. One of those things which isn't funny at all, but I found it funny. But, you know.
When I was a kid in drama class, I was when I made my first ever radio drama. Because I was obsessed with audio dramas ever since I was little, because I would hear them on Revelstoke radio. And so I made one with my friends for a drama class project just in my basement. But I screwed up in writing the script. So one character was supposed to say what's going on, but I had swapped out the first G for a D, or I had really bad writing, so it might even have been that. But my friend he's like, well, Brennan must know what he's doing. So he, with full throat, just went, "What's doing on?"
That's amazing.
So for years, that became a gag between us, like, "What's doing on?" You know, and it's not funny, but at the same time,
it's not funny, but it is funny. It's like, there's I remember when in my first like people manager role, I got it really young. I was like 21. I was looking after a team of like 6 50-year-olds who clearly didn't like the fact this 21-year-old was like looking after them. But I tried to be really nice to them, and in one of their reports, I wrote the phrase. I was praising them, but I wrote the phrase, like, let's say Terry has been 100% detrimental to the success of this campaign.
Oh no!
And my manager had to call me over and go, do you know what detrimental means? And I was like, yeah, like as in like we couldn't have done it without him. And he was like, no. He was like, you just
instrumental.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Instrumental, not detrimental. It is me saying, the Indian TV was funny. Kev can't even speak English, so.
I always love in Indian movies when they kind of switch, and I just think it's a cool thing that people who are multilingual can do. They'll switch seamlessly from one language to the other.
Yeah, 100%.
And I went to go see this film called Animal recently. It's a new release out of India. It's directed by a guy named, I want to say, Reddy Vanga. And it basically, it just throughout the film, they kind of transition from English to Hindi back to English, and so on and so forth. And it just, I mean, the movie itself is unintentionally funny because I actually thought it was a comedy at first.
Yeah.
Because it's like an incel's wet dream. The lead actor, he literally unironically uses the phrase alpha more times than I've had hot meals.
Oh my God.
And I thought, well, surely they're kidding. No. This is 100% serious. And apparently this is, even in India, this director's films are sort of controversial for this because he's got this kind of point of view. And I just, it was an experience. I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend it because at 3 hours and 20 minutes, that's a long time to watch the shittiest person you know mow down people with machine guns. But it was an experience. And again, it had the seamless language switching that I do enjoy.
It is good. Is it like is it like the Indian Andrew Tate?
Oh yeah, 100%. In fact, one of the Letterboxd reviews, in fact, my favorite Letterboxd review of the film is, so this is what Andrew Tate's dick looks like.
That's hysterical.
Like the film ends, with a big violent action scene, and then he has to go on his like final mission to stop the big bad guy. And he says, like, whatever her name is, if I don't come back, and I'm expecting him to say, please no, I've always loved you. Yeah. He says, if I don't come back, do not get married again.
Like Denise Richards in Scary Movie 3.
I forget. How does that go?
No, she won't have sex with anyone ever again. Promise me.
Right.
Yeah, I'll do anything you ask. Other than that.
Yeah. Now it's a Meatloaf song.
Did you see Mastermind this week? Somebody's specialist subject was Meatloaf.
Shut up. Was it? Genuinely?
Yeah. He got 8.
8 out of 10?
Well, I think they asked him was it 11 or 12 questions, and he got 8.
Within
he
the time.
lost overall on a tiebreak.
Whose specialist subject is meatloaf? I mean, you know what? The thing is, I feel bad on the likes of Mastermind. For those who don't know, is literally, well, I'm sure people know what Mastermind is. You've got 60 seconds on your chosen subject and it starts now. And some people will be like, world history, and you're like, fucking hell, good luck. And then other people will come on and go, Coronation Street episode 7. And you're like, come on.
I don't know. I feel like that's I feel like that's us whenever we're invited on the TV trivia podcast. Because, you know, we get to pick one movie and then we have a month leading up to it. So we just learn everything about the fucking movie. It's easy to be an expert in one tiny thing. I mean, this makes us look like geniuses, but really it's just nerdery and prep time.
Yeah.
No, if you've watched a film over 200 times, it isn't.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But I feel like you're an exceptional case.
It's in my DNA.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. During one of your Patreon specials, we sat and watched The 7 Jumping Vampires of Berlin or something. What was the name of that film?
The Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires.
The Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires. God, that was bizarre. That was a bizarre one.
Amazing.
I still think about that. Like, people say, have you ever watched any obscure films? And I try to remember the name and I think, don't, because you'll sound racist. So I don't. I just say no.
That was one of the better movies we watched on that stream.
Fabulous.
I'd hate to know what the other ones were.
Oh, I mean, the worst one was absolutely, I mean, we've talked about it a bunch on the show, but like Blood-Sucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh was by far the worst thing we ever watched.
Jesus.
Amazing.
Pharaohs.
Just pharaohs.
Pharaohs.
Oh, pharaohs. Blood-sucking pharaohs, as in Egyptian pharaohs.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought you meant ferals. I thought ferals make sense. You know, feral what? Feral dogs, feral humans, pharaohs. Oh my god.
North Face ninjas, Kev.
We got loads of North Face ninjas around here. Don't need them. I think
what is a North Face ninja?
So there's a coat for all seasons. Well, there's a coat for winter, like mountaineering coat. It's got like visors on the side of the hood, so that you can see in case you're trapped in an avalanche. But Scallies wear them outside Asda at 7 o'clock of the night. And Asda's a shop, a supermarket. So basically, you can squeeze the ties around the hood so that you just see the eyes. You're basically up to no good. You're a Scally, basically. And they normally hang around in like gangs of like 5 or 6, and definitely all carry knives. And they're the North Face ninjas.
I gotcha. So they're a little bit like if Kenny from South Park was armed
and dangerous.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite ironic because obviously there's a big climbing community in Sheffield, and North Face is obviously quite a popular climbing brand. So you see a lot of these like middle class lentil eaters wandering about wearing the North Face jackets, and I just smile every time. I say, I wonder if he's carrying.
Yeah, it's the same round here. It's like Spot the Gangster. It's like right, he's got a mountaineering 4x4, and he wears mountaineering gear on the flattest plain in 100 miles.
Nike Air Max.
You know, and then you see his wife. Yeah. And then his poor wife has to drive that 4x4 to school and ends up just bouncing it up a curb because she can't drive it.
The north of England is a magical place, is what I'm learning from all this.
Oh, it truly is. It truly is. It truly is. It does have its nice parts too, but it's a land of wonder. It is a land of wonder. It's like there was for some reason I walked past an argument once when I was about 22 between two neighbours arguing over the privet hedge. They were arguing at each other. They were both maybe in the 60s, and one of them thought that this was like the defining, like, I've won the argument. She just kept repeating, "Never forget your shit smells the same as mine."
What?
And yeah, that was it. And she was like smiling as she was saying it, and I was like, "How have you won?"
I will say this is something I'm from a working class family. I consider myself working class. However, one of the things that drives me crazy are these middle class or like working class colloquialisms that they think are really deep.
Yeah.
But they don't mean anything. Yeah. You know, it's honestly one of the phrases is just, I'm trying to think of an example, but It's always fatalistic shit. It's like, don't forget your shit smells the same as mine. I'm like, well, it probably not, like biologically speaking. I just think that it doesn't. Like that's very much determined by diet. I mean, there are certain enzymes that are the same.
Oh, Brennan, you should have been in that argument. That would have been amazing. Your shit smells the same as mine. Well, that's very much determined by diet. I think you'll find.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to stink 100%, but it's not going to stink the same, and that's what I mean, right? Like. Because I remember my family saying things like, "Oh, they think their shit don't stink." Like, okay, fine. Like that's just, I get that. You think you're snobby, or they think they're better than you. Fine, okay, that makes sense. But your shit smells the same as mine. Like, nope, that's just factually incorrect.
Yeah, I think that's someone who's took that saying you've just said there, and they've tried to somehow bend it to their own will, like some really dyslexic Jedi. And come out with that. This same lady, by the way, had a cat that she called Benson because she found him in the hedges, because there was a cigarette brand called Benson and Hedges. And Benson and this is the level we're dealing with. Yeah. So
I remember dealing with one guy who clearly was deluded about his own intelligence. And as you were saying earlier on, Kev, it's not rocket science or brain surgery. He had this catchphrase, and he thought he was really clever, and he wasn't. He was just gobby. And he used to just say, "It's not rocket physics, is it?" And every time he said it, I used to just like, if it's just like one more time, I'm going to hit him around the head with an ashtray.
I had one guy, one time he said to me, he used to be a friend of mine, and I think one of the gals in the group kind of like, they did that thing, you flick someone with your finger.
Like Sabutio.
I have no idea what Sabutio is, Kev.
Okay, so I'll just go with flicking someone with the finger then. I'll go with that. Okay.
Yeah, flicking with a finger, and he said, Don't thud me, I'm not a vat of yogurt. And we all went, what the fuck does that even mean?
And did he give it any explanation? Was there anything behind it? Or
no, I don't know if he thought like yogurt was made through percussion. I don't know. Never explained. He was also one of those guys who would make up words because he wanted to sound intelligent, but it would sort of be like some terrible portmanteau of about 3 different words that meant nothing. Every sentence was like a stroke.
Oh, that's amazing. And this was the episode they all got cancelled.
Well, I mean, I can always go back and take things out. That's the nice thing about not doing it live.
Yeah.
Not often, but sometimes people will say, I wish you guys had like a more unedited style show. And I think people don't realize how much bullshit gets said over the course of any recording session, and like how much you really have to trim from a show. Like I was actually talking to a friend of mine recently, and he said, how much do you actually edit out of the show? And I said, well, our recording sessions are 4 hours long. The shows themselves are about an hour and a half, and usually we have about 45 minutes of bonus chat for patrons. So you're looking at about maybe 90 minutes worth of stuff that just goes away. And he was really surprised. And I said, yeah, I mean, people don't understand how tightly controlled those environments are, because most times, most people are not funny all the time off the cuff.
No.
Some of the best shows I listen to, okay, well, you're an exception, Bestel.
Not to mention modest.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah, and handsome. I'm kind of curious to know, both of you, and we'll do this sort of roundtable style because obviously we've got the delay. And we'll start with our guest. We'll start with Kev. Kev, how has your life changed since you've become a podcaster? Because you are, I mean, we joke, but you're at this point, a legitimately famous podcaster. Like you're a professional full-time podcaster. Your show, The Dark Paranormal, is massive. And, so like obviously, and I've known you for a significant portion of that time. And I know sort of I've observed changes, but I'm kind of curious to know how your life has changed since you started podcasting.
You know what? It's they've all been psychological, if I'm being honest. If I'm getting deadly serious on it.
Yeah.
It's one thing because it's a strange thing. I remember when I was working and I just started doing We Need to Talk About Ghosts, and I was explaining to a friend of mine when we were having a smoke break about the potential that you could earn enough through podcasting to quit your job. And he was like, wouldn't that be a dream? And I was like, oh, tell me about it. And it seemed like this plateau that you'd never reach. And then almost like the myth of the frog in the boiling water, which is a fallacy, but, you know, it happened, and you quickly realise, well, I quickly realised the imperativeness of having social interaction with people, because you very quickly you've got no sounding board. So, for example, I was in the working environment, I was always, well, without sounding like a big head, you know, I'm no Paul Bestel, but I was, you know, I was classed as the funny one in work. You know, I was quick-witted, but the thing is, you were sharpening your sword each day because you knew where the line was, you knew what was acceptable, what wasn't. And I've found, since not having that and only having yourself as a sounding board, you know, it really affects you. It's an you never foresee it. You know, it's not something that you have on the horizon of success, this like absolute loss of people from your life. And it's impactful. It really is. You know, it knocks your confidence, it knocks your cadence, it knocks your thought process. It's a really interesting negative. From a positive perspective, you know, obviously you've got the freedom, but then again, there's how do you fill that freedom? There's the element of like, well, at least work gave you structure. You know, for example, I don't have to be out of the house by 7:45 every morning. So I'm not, you know, so sometimes I'm lying in bed at 9:30 thinking I might get up in a minute. And I don't know, I think it's success has landed on the wrong doorstep. I think there's people out there who probably would make a bigger go of this than I. I'm going to end up like 80 stone and immobile within 3 years.
And it's so funny because, like, again, from our point of view, you know, as I say, you're a very successful guy. You've accomplished a lot. You know, again, most people with podcasting, most people never reach that place. And that's a really small group to be a part of, people who can, you know, comfortably do this full time. So it's not an obvious thing, I think, to have that sort of, to have that perspective on it. Because I think, obviously, like when you look at someone who's doing well, you think, oh, they're doing well. You don't think that, oh no, they've got this, there's this lack in their life. And I actually think, like, it helps that you're a social guy anyways. Like, you've got that kind of personality where you can engage with people, I think, better than probably maybe you think you can. Because I know some podcasters who just, that is not a strength of theirs. We'll say they are not people.
I do know what you mean. I've become worse at it, and I you know, it's a strange one. There was a really comfortable point in my life. Weirdly, the ideal part was the climb. I know that this is cliche, but it was the climb when I went from full-time work to part-time work, when there was light at the fact, oh, I could do this full-time. That part was ideal because I was still having to get up to go to work, but I was finishing earlier, which gave me time to do the podcasts. And there was a good mix. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm far away from being able to finish this other job and just go full time. And then it happened, and I don't know, it was just, I think I just need to try and, it's strange what you think you'll have in terms of drive when you get there. And I know it's cliche to say, you know, a lot of the most disappointed people are when they reach the goal they've aimed to achieve. But it's not that I'm disappointed. I'm very lucky is basically the upshot. I'm very lucky, highly lucky. I'm no better than anyone, certainly not yourselves. Usually the consummate professionals. And in the subject which we cover, you know, we're covering the paranormal. And I've spoke about this many a time, and I spoke about it earlier on one of the shows I was doing, is Brennan's like a consummate, you know, you're the guy stood in the middle of the highway directing traffic like a pro. Paul is a font of 14 knowledge. And it should be role reversed, in truth. Do you know what I mean? You should be, you should be the guys who are known as whatever. And it's just fluke, in all honesty. It's fluke. And it could all be a bubble and it'll burst, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, we've been lucky enough, or I should say I'm lucky enough that I can do this full time. I mean, it's not a perfect way to go. I mean, I'm sort of in the position now where I'm having to do a little bit of extra work just because, you know, I've got additional expenses, but still, I don't have to go. Like, for example, recently I started delivering food again for a while, and I did it for a few weeks, and the money was just terrible. It was just terrible. I had a hard time getting shifts, and then when I did get shifts, there was not a lot of money there. You know, I was getting out of bed at 1:45 in the morning because the app went off and said, "Hey, we need people." Yeah. But so I would get dressed, run out to the car, get in the car, and go. But then I'd actually only get about 45, 50 minutes worth of work, and I'd make like $16, you know, so this is not really worth getting out of bed.
Yeah, literally.
But I'm lucky enough that when combined with the podcast, that's not crippling.
Yeah, you're not beholden to anyone.
Yeah, that's it. Like, sure, you know, it means, okay, I've got more debt than I'd like right now, but I'm not having to go to a job I hate that makes me throw up in the morning, you know, because I've been in that position, and I've got friends, you know, in that position, where they're doing what they're doing because they have to, as opposed to it's something they enjoy. And I'm lucky enough that I don't have to do that.
Yeah, and I think that is the one thing that I am very privileged about. I'm not blind to the luck and the privilege that I've got at all in the slightest, and not under any circumstance do I think I 100% deserve it at all. I think a lot of it is to do with fate, a lot of it is to do with luck. A lot of it is to do with, don't get me wrong, I put the fucking work in, pardon my French.
Oh,
but,
absolutely.
At the same time, I don't think it equates to what's taking place. But would I go back to the job I had where I was working 60 hours a week sometimes, and, you know, you wouldn't get any overtime for working those extra hours. You just get time back in lieu, which you could never take because you were always busy and you're dealing with people's problems left, right and centre of your own staff, and you were coming home and not sleeping and think, no, that's not worth it. Not worth it.
So, Paul, how about you? How has your life changed since you've started podcasting?
I'm still alive. I suppose that's the biggest change.
That's a bonus.
Really? Well, some would say so, yes.
If there's anyone who feels differently, you point them out to me and I'll beat the shit out of them.
Yeah, agreed.
For the first time in my life, I feel very comfortable in my own skin. I'm happy being the person I always should have been, whilst still maintaining the different facets. Because when I go to the pub with my mates, when somebody mentions the word podcast, you can see their eyes glaze over. And so I'll only try and talk unless I'm with one of my weird mates, and then we'll just talk about Bigfoot and the Fae and UFOs for ages and watch everybody else's eyes glaze over, and we don't care. But I suppose it's put me in situations I never imagined possible. It's allowed me to meet people I never thought would be possible. It's a source of frustration for me because I don't think I'm anywhere near doing as well as I could be. And therefore, I still think I'm only running on about 70% and have been for quite a while. And I'm not sure how I push myself further, but that's been an issue I've always had to deal with my entire life, that I've always had a frustratingly annoying ability to be able to do a good job without really trying sometimes, and that's always been my downfall. And this is probably the first thing that I've really committed to that's paid off, I think.
If I may, Paul, I would say that from listening to your show from its infancy to now, I think you're picking up mantles you don't realise you're picking up. I think in terms of how you've come on, like as in, you know, I know people bang on about Art Bell, and I've listened to a lot of Art Bell coast to coast stuff, and it turns out when he's not talking about ghosts, he's quite right wing. But I will say that, like, you know, from an interviewer perspective, there are certain people like Howard Hughes in the UK and there's mantles that you're picking up along the way that, like, you've really, like, without, you know, kissing arse or blowing smoke, you've really took the ball and ran with it in terms of being a paranormal expert. He's not here, is he?
Oh, no, fuck, he's not here at all. He is gone. Okay.
So I wonder if when I said, Paul, I hope you don't mind me saying, he did mind.
That's right. And go fuck yourself.
No, but it was truthful, though. It is, you know, in his absentia, as they say. You know, from listening to Mysteries and Monsters from the start to now, his calmness and his collectiveness and his how he phrases his questions and how he gets to the bottom of stuff is it's deeply interesting. He's asking all the right questions to all the right people. Do you know what I mean? There's no faff, there's no filler. And I mean that in a good way. And I mean that from someone who listens to nothing but paranormal podcasts and the like. Oh yeah, no,
I'm such a. He's not here, so we'll talk about him. And just for our listeners, this is going to be, again, this is a shaggy dog of an episode. This may be the most shaggiest of Ghost Story Guys episode ever, and I don't care because we're hanging out with our friends and it's Christmas. But I am so impressed by how much he has managed to accomplish, and it was interesting. I wish we had a proper internet connection, and so I could respond like in time, because we're on such a delay with Paul that, obviously we can't sort of interject, but
yeah.
To hear him say he's only kind of working at 70%, I don't know how. Oh, he's back. You have returned.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I was talking. Kev completely disappeared, and then I heard you ask me about me, and then that was it. It just crashed.
Yeah, it was all good though, Paul. Don't worry about it. My basic point was, I think you're picking up mantles that you don't realise you do, and I think you've from episode 1 to now. You're now getting into the Howard Hughes, Art Bell territory where, like, you know, there's a respect that you're carrying that you may not even realise yourself you're carrying. And this is, as I said to Brennan just then, I listen to nothing but paranormal podcasts. I don't listen to any other topic. So yeah, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. We're just saying about you running at 70%. And it's, what is this missing 30%? And, you know, what do you think you're capable of if you manage to get to that?
That's a terrifying. Yeah, I can't even imagine, dude. Like your output is incredible because you make a weekly podcast. You know, you have a full-time job in addition to that, and you do this on a weekly basis as well. It's like it's a truly Herculean amount of work, and I think it's good to step back and sort of. And just acknowledge that for yourself and be like, oh yeah, no, I am a fucking old school baller, and I am, you know, who is a badass.
I think it's because I used to work in the license trade, so you know that was 70 hours a week in the old days, you know, and so there are some days where I just don't feel that I've done a full day's work, even though I've probably, you know, I've done 8 hours in the office and then come home. 2 hours on an interview, then sort all the social media stuff out, check my emails, and then, you know, maybe go to bed.
I like the maybe in there. Maybe go to bed.
I'm terrible. I
think sleep is something which does not sit with podcasters. Every podcaster I know has an issue with sleep. Every single one.
I love a lie-in. I've never been able to go to bed early.
Yeah, same.
I've fallen asleep at the computer editing before. Like I'll just be sitting here with my mouse in my hand and just looking at the screen, and I'll wake up and realize, like, oh, nope, I've been asleep for 10 minutes. I didn't hear any of that.
I've fallen asleep. Sorry, go on, Paul.
No, after you, mate. Go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say I've fallen asleep with the phone in my hand on Instagram. And when I've woke up, it's been on some random page, and I don't know what I've liked, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, fucking hell, what have I done here?
What have I been live streaming?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. Like pitching me nostrils, but that's it. But, yeah.
I remember I used to work somewhere, and somebody left because they got told off for having naps at work, and they had their own special cushion that they'd bring into work to rest their head on. And they thought it was really unreasonable that they couldn't nap.
I mean, to be fair, I worked somewhere in a contact centre once, and we had international students, and they were mainly from India, and they would grab all the overtime that they could to get them through university and stuff, and no one was keeping track on the hours they were working. It was a 24-hour call centre, and it turns out after 2 months, somebody twigged that this one guy was working 22 hours a day. And he had been doing for like a month, and he was sleeping in his car for 2 hours and coming out, and they had a big internal meeting about it, and arses got kicked, rightly so, and he was mortified. He was like, no, I can crack on, I'm all right, don't take the money off me. And we were like, we kind of legally have to, we should technically be shut down.
That's wild.
It's not. It's just the you know. It's horrible. It's just state of, well, it's soapbox time now. But it's the state of the economy. It's and that was back then. That was like 15 years ago, and it's done nothing but get worse now. Mm-hmm. Especially with this, the I've always said, for me, private landlords have ruined anything that was good about housing and equality in Britain in general for the working class. When I was a kid, if you couldn't afford your own house, you got a council house, and you paid a rent on that council house that didn't go up and down regardless of inflation. And they made sure you could live. You could afford to live, albeit on the skin of your teeth, but you could afford to live. Mm. And then slowly they brought in the buy your own council house, and then people bought their own council houses, and then started subletting. And then now we're where we are, where you can't get a council house full of money, and everyone thinks they're the Wolf of Lime Street because they've bought like 3 flats and they're letting them out to hen stag do's on Airbnb, and the cost of buying your own house has gone through the roof.
Yeah, that's been a major problem here in Canada. I've talked about this on the show before, but like, you can't get a house in Victoria for less than $1 million. $1
million.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon across British Columbia, like Western Canada. I mean, here in Victoria, you're looking at minimum, I want to say 600,000, 700,000, something like that, for maybe a little bit less, maybe 500 for an old place. But and that's before strata fees, all that kind of stuff. That's just the buy-in.
And what's the like? I mean, I'm not sure whether you'll know, but what's the average earnings?
Not that. I mean, minimum wage here in BC is about $15 an hour. My wife works for the government. Nick works for the government. And she, back in the day, when you got a government job, you were set. That was a career. You stayed there for your life. You bought a house in year 2 or year 3, and you were on the road. And even I worked for the government for about 8 months in 2007. I worked for the Ministry of Education. And at the time, I was making $18 an hour. Now, before I moved to London, Ontario, I briefly considered going back into government part-time. They were paying exactly the same amount. God. 15 years later. 16 years later, they were paying $18 an hour.
See, but that used to, Paul, you'll know this, like it used to be the cost of a mortgage, ergo the cost of a reasonable house, was always 2.5 times your annual wage. That was how they used to do the math. They'd say, we'll give you a mortgage on 2.5 times your annual wage. Now, your annual wage in the north, at least, is probably somewhere between 27 and 32, say, £1,000. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to buy a house for £110,000 in Liverpool. You're just not. And the reason is because the houses have gone up so much because of private landlords, and then they get their fingers burnt because they get them with these mortgage things, and then the inflation goes up, so they put your rent up by £1,000, then you have to leave, then they're left empty-handed. So it's there's a bubble going to burst very shortly, I think, with these private landlords, and. Yeah. I've got no time for them. Anyone who says, no, we've got good private landlords, it's like, there's no such thing. A private landlord is, to me anyway, is someone who's trying to make money off people who can't afford their own home to line their own pockets. And that's just my view in it. And it's not a very popular one. Don't really care. It's true.
I don't mind if someone wants to own, like if you want to rent out your basement, or even if you want to own like a second house and you're going to rent that out, like, yeah, fine. Because I myself, I wouldn't want to own a house because I know how expensive, like I used to own a house. And funny enough, my mom, I was just talking to her the other day, the water pipe in their backyard collapsed. And so that's, $5,000 to $10,000 job. It's got to dig up the yard and all that stuff. And when I had my house, I had to replace the chimney out of nowhere, and that was $5,000. So you've always got these, especially, when you've got old houses, you've always got these repairs hanging over you. So I don't mind renting a place. But I do have a problem with these like REITs, these real estate investment trusts, which are just these colossal companies that snap up hundreds of properties, which is, I don't know about the UK, but I know that's a major issue in North America. I take issue with that because you're right. Yeah. It drives up the cost. So here is, just for example, we're talking about BC, and we'll get off this soon here, folks, because, well, whatever. I mean, this is not a ghost show today, but whatever.
Homes under the hammer.
Yeah.
No, it's me getting on a soapbox and going, and you know what I fucking hate?
You know what really grinds my gears?
Yeah. Yeah.
The average wage in BC, in British Columbia, the province where I have lived up until recently and where Nikki still lives, the average wage is $53,000 a year.
Right.
The average home price is $968,786.
I'm speechless because
right?
How are you meant to be a homeowner?
Well, especially now with interest rates going up and things like this. Like a lot of it has to be generational wealth. You have to inherit the house from someone. You need a substantial help with down payments from your family, from your parents, if your parents have money or your grandparents have money.
Talking about the cost of owning your own place, I do feel a little bit, this is the only bit I feel for them. We had a leak in our old flat and it was dripping through onto the false ceiling in the bedroom. And it'd be like a tambourine. So it was like a tambourine skin on a false ceiling. You're like, dong, dong. And we let them know. They got contractors out. This guy's like, right, I'm going to have to rip up your balcony. So the landlord agreed to that. That was like $3,000. Then next time it snowed, dong, dong. I was like, it's not fixed. So they get someone else out. He goes, like, the only thing we're going to have to do, we're going to have to rip out your entire ceiling of your bedroom, see where the leak is, fix it, then redo the ceiling. It's going to be about $9,000. So the landlord denied that. He didn't. He was like, no. And the fellow was like, well, all right then. Well, it's going to cave in one day. So one day I said to Becca, pass me a watering can. I said, you stay in the bedroom. And I went upstairs on the balcony. And I'm going, anything, we're on the phone to each other. No. Next thing, dong, dong, dong. And you know what it was? A little bit of silicone, like that you'd put outside on, like between a window. A little bit of that was missing. So I put a piece of tape over it. The next snowstorm, we had nothing. So we're talking about an inch of silicone that had cost this poor bastard $4,000 or something to have his balcony replaced. And they were trying to charge him $10,000 to take apart his ceiling. And it's like, you can't trust no one. It's just ridiculous.
That's rough. All right. So I'm kind of curious. Let's go back to this is the year-end wrap-up. So looking back over year 2023, guys, we'll start with Kev. What has surprised you most about the way things have gone as far as your podcasting world goes in 2023? What's maybe a win you want to share, and just again something that's surprised you about kind of the way it's gone?
You know what? Without sounding, it's hard not to sound braggy about this. My dad has always been very make sure you've got something to fall back on. Like when I suggested to him I was going to leave full-time employment to talk about ghosts, you can imagine he was a bit like, he's from a generation of, you work for the council, for example, as you said, and you've got a job for life.
Right.
So when I said I'm leaving working more or less for the council at the arena to talk about ghosts, he was beyond mortified. But then slowly over the course, literally over 12 months, I'd got myself out of debt through it. I then went part-time. And then for the first time in my life, and I'm talking mid-40s, I had like $5,000 in the bank that was savings, which was unheard of. And I remember sitting in the car with them and saying, do you know what? I've got $5,000 in the bank and it's mine. Like no one can touch it. It's like I don't know anyone anything. It's completely mine. And I was really proud. And he could kind of see, and he was like, okay, fair enough. And then, like, now that's gone a fair bit higher, and I'm still a little bit, now I'm a bit scared. Now I'm a bit like, I shouldn't have that. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm even more scared, because as I've realised, when it gets past 1:30, if I'm still awake, I'm like, oh, why shouldn't I buy a Buick 74? Like, or something stupid. So I'm a little bit, and I maybe need to just have, like, I don't know, somebody to look after me money for me is my one concern. So I think financially I'm more secure than I ever thought I would be. But at the same time, I'm very conscious it could all be over tomorrow. So I'll smile while it's the sun's shining.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's all you can do, right? And I think, Paul, I'm sure you can back me up on this. I think that's coming from a working class background, right? Like, you having been through economic ups and downs. I'm from a mill town where really, and a railroad town where your finances are affected by the market, and then you can do nothing about that, right? So if the price of wood goes down, then they're going to need fewer people on shift at the mill. And that didn't affect me because my family didn't work at the mill, but it affected my friends' families, and my dad, when he was around, he worked on the railroad. And when the railroad started scaling back operations in the Revelstoke rail yard, that affected us. And so I think when you grow up working class, being affected by factors that are totally beyond your control, I think it's hard not to have that slightly fatalistic view of this. Like, well, things are good, but things, we've seen boom and bust before, and things can always be not good. So I think it's hard to get out of that mindset.
I think it definitely is hard to get out of the mindset. I said this to my dad the other day. I said, the main difference between somebody who's working class and somebody who's upper class is the word bankruptcy. Because somebody who's upper class or, comes from wealth, the word bankruptcy means nothing to them, because their parents have probably been bankrupt many a company, many a time. They've written off, they've started again, they're given no roof, there's no ceiling to what they can achieve. A working class person, the word bankruptcy can mean suicide. Do you know what I mean? That's the difference.
Yeah. That
is the difference. It's the terrifying sort of what you brought up. It's that, what's that, like that experiment about fleas, and they'll only jump as high as they see the parents jump, but they've got the capability to jump twice as high. So I can't remember the experiment. They trap fleas in a jar, for example, and say they've got a 20-inch straight leap. They put them in a jar so they could only leap 10 inches. The parents learned to leap 9.9 inches so they didn't bang their head. They then gave offspring. They gave birth to kid fleas, and the kid fleas watched the parents jump 9.9 centimeters. Then they took the lid off and let the kid fleas out, and they only ever jumped 9.9 centimeters when they had the potential to jump 20 inches, but they never dared try. And I think that's the difference between working class and upper class. They've got no ceiling if you're upper class. If you're born into wealth, bankruptcy means nothing to you. If you're born into, not necessarily poverty, but if you're born into a working class environment, bankruptcy is a very different word.
Yeah, that's fair. I absolutely agree with that completely, because that is a fear I live with constantly. There's always been this huge amount of anxiety around money, and thankfully my mother, she raised us. She was very good at saving money, and she remains good at saving money. But I think, and I know she'll hear this because my sister listens, but I think it marks you, because my mom is doing okay, but there's never a place where you're doing okay enough to relax, because you said, it can all go away.
That's it.
Even if it's unlikely to go away. And even if you end up in a position where I think if you're independently wealthy, even if you have 6 figures in the bank, there's never a time when that can't just go away, or where you might think, okay, well, now I have to rely on this exclusively, which means I'm going to start spending it, which means it could eventually go down to nothing. And what if I can't replace it?
So I still wake up sometimes in like cold sweats, thinking I've done something horribly wrong and everything's gone away. Do you know what I mean? And it's back to square. Well, not back to square one, but like it was all a bit of a dream sort of thing. And it's a very real, like visceral sort of fear. It's more of a case of you didn't take advantage, and I think that's the worrying part. That like I said earlier, I'm lying in bed till 9:30. If it all fell apart, I'd be like, why wasn't you up at 7?
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I think I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because I think one of the great things about doing this is being able to set your own schedule. Because if you're not going to bed until 1 a.m, then I think staying in bed till 2 or 3 in, maybe, I think staying in bed till 9:30 is not so bad, because you're kind of making it up on the other end.
Yeah.
You know, like again, I think I mentioned earlier, and I can't remember if this was on air or off air, but you know, I'm a little bit of a workaholic. It's a little bit of an issue for me, and it's because it just you know, the Ghost Story Guys is the first time I've done something artistically that has taken off.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've had a project that I've kind of gotten involved with, and it's worked out, and I've been able to keep it going, and it's kind of like, it's wonderful, but it's also scary, because you think, oh man, if this tanks out, what do I do from here? You know, do I just go back to working at the grocery store? Is that kind of the next thing? And it lends itself to this. Well, I have to focus on this. I have to tend this garden to make sure it continues to grow. And I think, again, that translates to working well past perhaps when other people would stop for the day. And I have to imagine I know for Paul, I know it's that for you, and I have to assume it's the same for you, Kev. Like you probably work more doing what you do than, or close to what you were doing in terms of raw hours, what you were doing at the arena.
You know what? I worked out the other day. It's more.
That doesn't surprise me.
And I blew myself away. I was like, that wasn't the point of what I wanted to do. Ideally, what I wanted to do was make enough money off podcasting to write me up more music.
Right.
But, you know, then you're like, oh, then podcasting makes money. I'll make another podcast then. And then you realise that podcast, especially if, I tell you what, that, like at the Dark Paranormal, somebody sends me a story, I edit it, I read it out. So, you know, fine. A true crime podcast, no one's sending me nothing. And here's me thinking it's going to be a piece of piss. I'm spending like 7 hours getting people's names wrong, and then people are emailing me angrily, you've pronounced Faubra, and you're like, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's especially like when, you know, it's a strange time. It's a strange time, but it's yeah, I'd like to say it's exciting. It's I don't know. I also feel a little bit guilty, you know, when I love you guys, and I think you guys are great. And like I've said about Paul's knowledge, I mean, we're talking about the paranormal here, and Paul's knowledge comparatively to mine is unbelievably superior. And I don't know, I sometimes feel a little bit guilty that I'm reaping financial rewards, and Paul should be reaping a similar sort of thing. I empathise with what he's saying when he's saying, I feel like I'm doing, and I should be. I'm not getting. I get the sense that you're not getting you're not getting back what you're putting out. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
I feel like you should be held in esteem. I'm not saying Brennan shouldn't. Brennan's like, hey, what's going on here?
I just
mean, like, you know, yeah. As you said earlier, Paul, you said earlier, Danny Robbins, BBC presenter, is getting in touch with you to say, let me come on your show. Do you know what I mean? This all amounts to something. There's a gravitas that you're clearly creating around yourself in regards to being known as a paranormal expert. And I feel guilty saying things like putting spooky music on and going, and then in the corner was a demon. You know, and that's where I feel a genuine guilt, because there's a sincere interest in the paranormal. There's a sincere respect in people who know what they're talking about. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's a strange kind of like, I don't know, not necessarily imposter syndrome, but close to.
You know, it's one of those things, as everybody gets eventually what they deserve. I'm always a big believer in that. So it's, yeah, like you said, I mean, I still have to pinch myself sometimes, like when I'm having conversations with people, and they'll ask me my opinion about something, and I don't see myself on their level or as to be not valued enough, but I still feel very wet behind the ears in regards to this. And sometimes it is humbling when people say they love coming on the show, or they always look forward to being on it, or that you know, they listen to the show. I take it. I still find myself having to pinch myself sometimes when somebody compliments me on things or whatever, and you know, when you say such lovely things about me, Kev, it's deeply moving from a rough and ready young man from South Yorkshire sometimes. And like you say, I think it's tough for me sometimes, because I think because of all the struggles I've had previously, as you were referring to about how, you know, our upbringings are very similar, Kev, because we're from very similar parts, and that kind of post-industrial wasteland that we grew up in the 80s here. It's difficult sometimes to think that when I wake up tomorrow, will it all be over? I think that's the fear we always have. And sometimes it's that kind of fear that stops you sometimes reaching your potential. And I think because I've tried things and had opportunities in the past that, for things out of my control or for other reasons or due to my own personal health, haven't come to fruition, I'm always, like you just said, a bit worried about things a little bit. So I'm still... Nobody likes the person who's continually humble, even when they're getting success. You know, that false sense of humility is quite annoying. I think. It can grate. Yeah, exactly. And I'm always very conscious that whilst I am very well versed, I still am taken aback sometimes. Like when Pat Spain got in touch with me and said, "Oh, I'm a big fan of your show," and I was like, "Jesus Christ." You know, some of the people who listen to the show, I would never have imagined 5 years ago I'd be speaking to these people. You know, I started it as a way of saving my life, really. And so to get to a point where people see me as an equal or an expert in any particular facet of the fortune is still something I battle with daily.
It's amazing that you battle with it, but considering, I mean, Brennan's, like, I've listened to the Ghost Story Guys since its inception, and I always recall, in fact, me and Brennan know each other because I got in touch and said, like, would you give me a shout out? And Brennan got back and was like, well, I'm going to have to listen to your show first, because if it's shite, I'm not. I was like, all right.
Did I really say that?
Yeah, more or less. And then he gave a very nice shout out. And but at the time, it was obviously Brennan and Ian, but in reality, it's the show itself's come on leaps and bounds, because Brennan, I think, will be the first to acknowledge that, like, there was, you know, at the start you had Brennan and Ian, and when something would come up, if there was stuff they didn't know, there was stuff they didn't know. Whereas now, if there's something that comes up, Brennan can say literally, "Paul, what do you know of this?" And you'll be like, "Oh, the water horse of 1943. Yeah, that's and stuff comes off that, and it makes it much more of a you know, there's a synergy there that's really hard to try and put into words. But I was just wondering then, flipping this round then, Brennan, 12 months, what's it been like for thee? Because you've done nothing but move around, haven't you?
Yeah, so I started this year living in Montreal. I went back to Victoria in May, and I moved to London, Ontario in October. So it's been a very tumultuous year that way. I mean, thankfully, I have a wonderful wife who understands that I am very bad at being in one place. And I was for a long time. I stuck around Victoria for a very long time because that's where we lived. But it's just not a great place for me. I don't thrive here. And I like to joke that God makes farmers and fishermen, and I'm the latter.
I don't understand that reference at all, but go on.
Oh, so farmers, you stick around home and you wake up in the morning and you mind the homestead and you take care of the house, and you stay in one place. And fishermen, They go out to sea and they come back.
And you're the fisherman.
I'm the fisherman. This is why I don't have kids, because I know that I would be bad at providing that steady day-to-day presence in a person's life for someone who really needs that, because I get restless. And so, for me, honestly, I think this year has been, despite the fact I've been moving around a lot, I think this year has been really about acceptance for me. You know, I started working, because by the end of 2022, I was a wreck. I should say I was coming out of being a wreck, but I was still in a pretty bad place. Like and I've talked about this in past, but you know, the pandemic was very difficult for me because, I mean, it's difficult for everyone, but you know, it was like two of my worst fears, being stuck in one place, possibly forever, you know, because we didn't know how things were going to go, and being caught up in something I cannot control, that involves like sickness, which obviously a pandemic is exactly that thing. And so that really screwed me up psychologically. Obviously, like the change, like the changing of the guard of the show was very stressful, and all this shit. And then I also started running into health problems. My feet started to hurt so bad that I couldn't walk anymore.
But yeah.
And I was gaining a lot of weight, and I couldn't, like, because I was really, you know, getting active, was walking a lot. Then all of a sudden my feet started, and it would get better for a couple of days, and then it would be so bad I'd be like crawling to the bathroom because my feet hurt so bad. To a podiatrist in Victoria, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm sure it's fine." And then when finally some friends had moved to Montreal, and they said, "Hey, you know, I know you're having a hard time there. We love Montreal. Why don't you come out for a while?" And so I did. And one of the first things I did was I went to go see a podiatrist, and he said, "Oh, you have severe plantar fasciitis."
And what the Lord's name is that?
It's inflammation to the bottom of your feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it flat feet sort of thing?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have the right support, the tissue gets a bunch of micro tears and becomes really inflamed.
Oh, God.
And because I'd spent so much more time at home than I used to, and our floor is concrete. It's an old building, so we have this thin layer of carpet over acres of concrete. So I was gaining all this weight from the pandemic, and that was obviously, I'm exerting more force on my feet, which is pressing down into the concrete. It just fucked up my feet. So for the first month in Montreal, I couldn't leave my building because I couldn't walk. But the doctor figured this out, and so they started taping up my feet and all this shit. So once, after about a month, I got my orthotics, and then I was able to start like increasing the amount of time I was walking. And from then I started working with this nutritionist who really kind of helped me figure out how to eat. Cause for a long time, food was like a real problem for me. I was always a hefty guy. I was a lot of shame around food, a lot of emotional triggers with food. So I would feel sad, so I would eat, and then I'd feel worse, and all these things. So this guy was a really sweet guy, really good guy. He was a former hockey player, gave me a pretty good deal. And he just really helped me figure out what my body needed, how to get there. And I started losing weight, and I started feeling healthier. And then I started being able to work out again. And it all kind of progressed. But it wasn't until January of this year that I really felt like I was in a stable starting place. Because honestly, most of September to December last year was like just getting me to a place where I felt like a functioning person. Because I was in a lot of pain. I felt shitty about myself, all these things. And so this year has been a year of rebuilding in a lot of ways. And so I'm in probably the best physical health of my life now. Because, I've figured out why my body does X, Y, and Z. So I've been able to recommit to the gym. I'm lifting, weights. Like, I'm 40 now, right? So I'm never going to be able to do some of the stuff I did when I was younger. Like, I think a 300-pound bench press is probably beyond my capabilities at this point in my life.
Yeah.
But that's fine, right? Like, I don't need to do that shit. Like, I can still lift a lot of weight, and it's not a big deal. And I just feel better. But kind of, I had to start from there. So I started from like very low, built it up. And I think I've just come to accept I've learned a lot about my body. I've learned a lot about how my brain works. I've learned I'm very likely, I very likely have ADHD. I'm also very likely on the autism spectrum, which explains a lot of my interactions with people, because I tend not to get along like with a lot of people. Like, I like people, but I very often find I make some people uncomfortable, and it's not intentional. It's not like I say dumb shit. I'm a pretty intense guy, and like, some people, I don't know, they find that off-putting, or they're threatened by it, or they don't know what to say to me. So people sort of just withdraw. And I used to think that meant I was doing something wrong. You know, like, I'm shitty, there's something wrong with me, people don't like me, I'm not likable. No, I have friends. Obviously, I'm talking to two of them, you know, and I have other friends. It's just my friends, the people I vibe with, are a very, very, very small group of subset of people. And I've come to recognize that and just accept that. And accept that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I'm never going to be. And that's okay, because I've got the people who stick around are good people. They're cool people. They're talented people. And those are the people I want to be around anyways. And like with the show, with the podcast, I mean, I feel, even though it's not as ghost intensive as I know some people would want, or paranormally intensive, I think we've achieved this really great mix of, and I said this on the last Talk Spooky, I think we've achieved this really great mix of paranormal stuff with heart and thought-provoking conversations and connection, so people can kind of see themselves in the show and take something away from it. Like, if they want hardcore spooky stuff, go listen to the Dark Paranormal. It's a great fucking show. And if you want something that's a little bit shaggy, Ghost Story Guys is there. And again, I don't think Ghost Story Guys is ever going to be like the Joe Rogan podcast, right? Like, we're just, because of what it is, because it is a little bit of a shaggy dog, it's, you know, we do take a bit of a political stance, and, you know, we have sort of an ethos that way, and it's hard to engage with the show without also engaging with that ethos, right? So yeah, it limits us a little bit, but I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with where it's at.
Where would you say that you, like, heading into, let me get the year right, 2025? Where do you you know, what do you, if you have any, because not everybody does, but do you have any goals in terms of the show?
I want to keep making the show the best quality version of itself it can be. And I want the show, for me, I want the show to be my portal into the world. That's what the show represents to me, because I'm not close to most of the people I grew up with, because we went very different roads, and they're not bad people. Most of them are good people, but we don't have similar lives anymore. So for me, the show is my way to connect to the larger world. So I would like for the show to continue to be that. I want the show to be a place where people can come and you know, if 1,000 people download it and 10 people go, I like this works for me, and it means something to them, I'm cool with that. I mean, would I like the show to grow? Absolutely. You know, I would love that. But I'm also comfortable admitting we're in sort of this privileged position where we're doing like X number of, you know, X tens of thousands of downloads a month, right? We're, you know, just under 100, but the number of people who've subscribed on Patreon and via Apple Podcasts, that has grown quite a bit. So like we're sort of, financially speaking, we're doing better than other shows which are bigger. Yeah. Because of that heart connection.
And you do manage to pull that off. I'm going to say pull it off. That's not meant to imply it's a con, because I know how genuine and sincere you both are. And that comes across, I think, in what you both do. And I know you've got that balance. You know, it seems to be getting more and more balanced the more and more you go, in terms of the community. There's a community feel to the Ghost Story Guys. That, you know, it was always there, sort of, but it's becoming more and more and more as it goes on. A genuine one. Yeah, no, there is. You can feel it. You can hear it through the feedback that you're getting, and the sort of what's the right word I'm trying to think of? The kind of fluidity in which you two together are coming together, because you come from, you know, that really difficult situation. The whole crossover in terms of hosts, that was, you know, I really felt for you when that period went through. That was horrible. And to talk about making a bad situation better it's unbelievable that the last 12 months even, to the point where now it's like it's a known thing. Do you know what I mean? If I talk to other people about paranormal podcasts, the Ghost Story Guys is often mentioned.
That's very cool.
And it is cool. It is cool, but it's because of you guys, and it's because of how you are honest. This is the thing. There's a, like I was saying before about the two shows I've got. One has got a very small audience and a very captive audience and a very friendly based audience, and one has got a listenership. And there's a difference. There's a difference between a listenership and a community, and you've got a community and a listenership. And touch wood, it grows and grows.
Yeah, and I would say like that sort of was the thing I took away from this year, was accepting that, yeah, Ghost Story Guys is, like I said, it's probably not going to be the biggest show, even the 10th biggest paranormal show out there, but we're going to keep amassing a community of cool people, talented people who will want to do other things. Because like I'm like a little kid. I like being invited out to play, but the way my brain works, and again, this is kind of a neurodivergent thing, I'm told, I have to be invited. I'm not good at approaching people because I sort of have this thing in my head where I'm like, oh, if I'm not in your immediate field of vision, I don't exist. Like, I just assume no one thinks about me when I'm not, like, if you're listening to the show, fine. But if I'm like talking to you, fine. But if I'm not there or you're not listening to the show, I can't imagine that I would possibly appear in your thoughts. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's my goal for 2024 is just to do cool things with cool people. And that's not necessarily a goal of the show, but I want the show to continue to be a conduit to the world, to cool people who are empathetic people who are interesting and want to work on cool stuff. Like there's actually a project there are two projects that have come to me recently through the show, and one of them I've mentioned to you, Paul. The other one I actually haven't had a chance to tell you about yet, so I'm not going to mention it here, but I've had two very cool people reach out to me, two very accomplished people who want me to work on something with them. And like, that's a massive honor to me. I mean, they're people we've worked with, so it's not a surprise maybe, but it's still, it's an honor when talented people reach out like that. And so, yeah, just for the show to be like my conduit into the world and to provide some additional opportunities, because that's all I'm in pursuit of in this big bad world. I mean, I want financial stability. I don't need to be rich. I just want to be stable. And I want to do and try different things. That's why the horror film I did, short film I did recently, that's why that was such a blast, was because it came out of nowhere. And I mean, that had actually nothing to do with the podcast. That was just the director saw my profile on Backstage. And there's another film I'm supposed to be doing sometime. I was supposed to be in November. It looks like it's been pushed, but stuff like that, just like plugging into a larger artistic community. And it kind of goes to what you were talking about, Kev, where, this can be a very solitary job, and that is not awesome.
It's not.
Because even when I had a job prior to this, when I was working for the consulting company, I worked alone in a room for 6 years. And that's hell. That's hell. Yeah, that was hell. Yeah.
Because you need to sharpen your sword. You need other people. I mean, I was never one to believe it. I always used to think that I could live in a cabin in the woods and I'd be fine. But it turns out I'm a social creature, and I need people around me.
Same here, man. And like, not all the time, but enough. I need to feel connected to people at least a little bit to kind of, because we're entertainers, right? So we take the world and we filter it through us and present it to our audience.
Exactly.
And if there's no input, then there can't be any output. And I will say, like, that I'm at my worst on Ghost Story Guys when I haven't been doing stuff in my life. Like, if you listen to the shows from the summer of 2022, I really feel like there's some of my it's like, I'm never going to say we put out a bad show, because we never put out a bad show. Like, Paul is physically incapable of putting out a bad show. Yeah. There are definitely some shows from around that time that are not our best. And it's because I'm in a very bad place mentally, and it's because I'm just kind of stuck in my life and I can't seem to find an outlet to sort of interact with people. And so I don't have anything new to mine. I don't have any new straw to spin into podcast gold, so to speak.
Yes.
And so that's why like Montreal was great, because I could do the improv class. There was always something going on. And that's why, to a lesser degree, London is great. I mean, London is great for different reasons. And Montreal, like, I couldn't live there full time because I want to get other work, and the language barrier was a major barrier there. So yeah, that's sort of my goal, is to continue making the best possible show, and to meet other cool, talented people and be inspired by them. Because I'm inspired by Mike Brown, who we just had on the show, from Dark Poutine. Like, Mike is a super cool guy who produces a great show. It's, I think, like, again, the number 1 or 2 podcast, true crime podcast in all of Canada. Massive show. He does it full time. Brandon Scheck-Snyder from Southern Gothic, you know, and you. Like, I'm continually inspired by you, man. Because again, you and I come from not dissimilar backgrounds. I mean, obviously, geographically, it's not the same. But in terms of, like, we both came up, you know, fairly poor, and you know, like, you've managed to take this threat, this like kernel of an idea, and turn it into something really beautiful. And I've followed you, like, you know, I've been your patron for WinTag basically, I think, since there was a Patreon. And you know, I listen to the ramble, and you know, I know what, like, to a certain degree, I know what's going on, and I've seen you struggle, and I've seen you face those struggles, and I've known people who would face the struggles you've faced and go, fuck it, I'm done, I quit, this is too hard. And you didn't do that. You kept going, you pushed through it, and there was a point, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but
no.
You know, there was a point where I actually was worried you were going to hang it up, because I know you were not happy doing, like, with what you were doing. And instead of hanging it up, you made a show that is now, like, if I mention the Dark Paranormal to people at my wife's office, they know what I'm talking about.
Let's go.
And so, like, again, I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired because you have kept going no matter what. Yeah. And so, like, that is the best thing the show has done for me, is to put me in touch with people like you. And Paul, I mean, I didn't mention you specifically, Paul, just because I assume it's, like, implied, but obviously you too. Like, and this is a big old mushy episode, and I don't give a shit. But, like, to be able to work with you on a weekly basis, and again, be inspired by you and your work ethic, and by your enthusiasm for the world, and your like enthusiasm for knowledge and your curiosity, like, that is such an honor. And that's what this show is to me. It is a way for me to plug into this apparatus it built of incredible people, whether it's our listeners who again, we have so many cool, creative people who I've got this opportunity to meet and have dinner with and beers with, and every single one of them I remember, and I enjoy those interactions, and it just makes my life richer. And, like, hanging out with Paul every week, again, is just this weekly reminder, like, I can't be boring. I got to talk to Paul. I got to have something interesting to say to Paul, because he's going to have something interesting to say to me.
Yeah. But that must be really cool, though, too, as well, to have that. I mean, I know sometimes from personal experience, sometimes you both must be like, fuck's sake, have I got to... And not because of each other, but just in terms of, like, I just can't be arsed with this. And within half an hour of chatting, you're like, I'm made up, I've done this. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely.
Oh, I mean, and you and I were talking about this, Paul, when we did Dairyland Frights a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, we were both kind of feeling not so great when we went into it, and by the time it was over, we had a blast.
Yeah. And what about yourself then, Paul, in terms of 2025 and Mysteries and Monsters? I mean, because you're known for having a plan as long as the River Nile, in terms of, you know, in June of 2033, I have.
Well, I have got 8 shows lined up already for January.
Fuck you.
There you go.
Sorry, I just can't help myself. Well, I mean, the highlights of this year is introducing Brennan to moisturiser and getting him to accept, you know, metrosexuality in all its glory.
Fair play.
And he's seeing the benefits of that. People are even complimenting on the quality of his skin these days. So I'm sure he must have thought I was pulling his leg at first. But I'm a big believer in cleanse, tone, moisturise.
I absolutely did. I thought that you were punking me so hard with skincare, but man, like that, I cannot tell you. And that's a great example, right? Because if you get to interact with talented, like engaging, cool people, you're going to become, if you shut the fuck up and listen long enough, you will become an engaging, talented, cool person yourself. And I don't know if I'm that far, but like, I learned from you, like I look so much better now that I shave my head every 4 days. And I didn't know that fucking head shavers existed until you told me. Hey there, listeners. Before you reach for that skip 15 seconds ahead button, I promise you this isn't an ad. We wanted to take a minute to talk to you about mental health. On this show, I've always tried to be as honest and open as possible about my struggles with depression and anxiety, because even though we've come a long way towards acknowledging the very real damage these things can do, there is still way too much lingering stigma about reaching out for help. And when you start to feel like there's no help, it's easy to start feeling like there's no hope. But Paul has joined me today to remind you there is always hope and there's always help.
We're not going to try and talk you out of self-harming right now, because we know that's not how it works. Instead, what we wanted to do was tell you something now and hope that should things get bad, you'll remember it and make a phone call or send a text message before you make any permanent decisions. As someone who knows all too well just how important mental health can be, it's never too late to reach out.
In Canada, the number to call is 133-456-4566. In the USA, the new number to call is 988. That's 988.
In the UK, the number to call is 116123 or text SHOUT, that's SHOUT, to 85258. In Australia, the number to call is 131114.
However bad shit seems, it will pass. And no matter what your brain might be telling you at any given moment, and believe me when I say I know this intimately, there are people who love you and people who care deeply about how you treat yourself. Should a time come when you find yourself despairing, please know that we've both been where you are, and there is a way back to the world. Take care. And yeah, like the skincare, I look fucking great, and it's because I do this skincare thing. And if I didn't have someone whose opinion I trusted, who's like, no, do it. And if someone gives you shit for it, tell them to go fuck themselves, because they're going to look like an old boot, and you're going to look great. And I did, and I do.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm looking for more people to give skincare tips to, Kev, and the benefits of what that can give them. But yeah, I think just keep plugging along. It's trying to get a more sort of focused, laser pinpoint work ethic, I think, because sometimes I'm still a bit slapdash. And
well, you say that, but when your line went earlier, I was saying to Brennan, one of the things that I've noticed is your ability to pinpoint people down and pin people down on questions has come on. So it's not even leaps and bounds. It's like like I said, you're picking up mantles of the likes of your Howard Hughes's, your Art Bells. Like, people don't come away from one of your episodes now thinking, why didn't he ask this, or why didn't he push him on this, or you come away educated. And there's not many shows that do that in this realm.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the best benefit I've got, and I've always had this, is that the vast majority of people that I have on are people I want to speak to.
Yeah.
And primarily because, as with anything in my life, if I'm not interested, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
For better or worse, what I know about cars, you could write on the back of a stamp.
Yeah.
Because it's never, even growing up with mates, and all they used to do was tinker with their cars, and we'd all go driving every weekend till like 4 a.m. I was more interested in sorting the mixtapes out for the car journey rather than, what carburetors they were talking about or having tinted windows and all that shit. I had no interest in stuff like that. So it's one of those things that I've always strove to continue being a conversationalist in regards to the subjects I'm interested in, and it enables me to then enjoy talking to people about something I want to know about, because there will always be situations and conversations, and I'll be honest, I've had guests on in the past where I suspect I probably know more about the subject we're talking about than they.
You know what? I was just about to ask. I was going to say, don't name names, but have you ever had someone on say about a particular subject, and when they're saying things, you're thinking wrong, wrong.
yeah, more than once.
I bet you there has. That's hysterical.
But I regardless, I think the best thing about the show is it's not confrontational. It's a conversation where I try to, because I've always made a big thing of this. I don't have questions. I don't have a list of things to tick off.
Yes. I let it go where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm always weird with weird knowledge that I will read their book. I will watch their film. I will. One of the things I always do is, especially if I've got somebody who I haven't spoken to before or not been on for a while, I will always listen to every interview they've done in the previous 12 months.
Wow.
Because I think the one thing sometimes people forget is, they're the draw. So when they're on the show, people aren't tuning in to listen to me ask somebody some questions. They're listening to this person talk about their particular experiences or their body of work or the cases that interest them. And so if I just go into that completely cold, and my biggest critic, there are still interviews I do now where I think, I've been shit today. And that's just the bar I set myself. I've got high standards. And if I feel like I'm dialing it in at any point, I'm always annoyed with myself, even though some people these days would probably think that I don't. There's been a couple this year where I know I've not been on my game very much for different reasons. But that's how real life can seep in sometimes without you noticing it on occasions. But
yeah.
I think...
I mean... What I would say, Paul, just to interject, sorry, is that where I see what you've done over the last at least 12 months is you've become the sort of interviewer where I'll listen to an episode of your show because of you, and that's it. That's the key difference. You're talking about the guest being the pull, but you're now the pull because I know whatever the topic is, I'm going to find something interesting due to your line of question. So that's where you've stepped up, and I don't mean like there was something to step up from. I'm not trying to say anything derogatory previously. I just mean there's a notable calmness and seriousness and attention to detail about what you do and when you're interviewing. So so congratulations to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean I've been invited by a gentleman called Jason Pentrail to appear on, and who emailed me several years ago and said that he was a big fan of the show. Jason does a lot of work into uncovering the history of the indigenous peoples of North America before the Native Americans appeared. So doing a lot of research into the Clovis people and these burial mounds and everything. Does a lot of work alongside Micah Hanks under the Seven Ages podcast and social media, and to be invited to join him for a conversation is quite humbling. That he thinks I've got a valid resource,
an objective point of view. Yeah.
To be invited on to talk with him. These are people I have great respect for in the work that they do, and it's. I've always said one of my biggest blind spots, and you'll probably completely agree about this, Kev. What we're talking about, the indigenous peoples of North America in this country, you could probably write in a Christmas card,
Oh God, yeah.
So
yeah. Literally, I ran into it the other week. I mistermed something, which I was completely oblivious to, but apparently it was offensive. And the reason I gave was, listen, we're not educated about that side of thing over here, you know, in terms of that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something very close to me anyway, seeing as I grew up supporting the most racist sports team in all of North America, who have thankfully changed their name. So I'm not embarrassed to be a fan of theirs anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're 12 years old watching American football over here in the UK, you've no idea what the inference of that name meant. You know, for us.
Mate, I had a suede jacket with the emblem on the back. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, I've had to put all my old sports, all my sportswear of that particular team are all folded up out of the way in a cupboard, and are never seen outside of the house.
Oh yeah, I don't have it now. God forbid.
Yeah. Too busy wearing one of them jackets with a panther on back instead, Kev. But I think I just want to keep improving and getting hold of a few people that I've yet to, you know, I've still got a hit list of people that I really want to speak to, and especially in this particular field, some of them aren't getting any younger.
Yes,
because it's not amusing, but I remember when I first started, and one of the first people I emailed was Stanton Friedman, and 2 weeks later he passed away. And I thought, oh, for fuck's sake. I was absolutely...
And so began the curse of Bestel.
Well, I did also email Rosemary Ellen Guiley as well, and then she passed away. Thankfully...
Oh, Jesus.
After 270 episodes, I think that curse has been put to bed. But,
yeah, that's been put to bed now.
You know, there are still people I would love to speak to. Whitley Strieber. I'd love to speak to Lauren Coleman. I'd really like to have a chat with Cliff Barrackman. Matt Moneymaker, Dean Harrison, who's a Yowie researcher in Australia. I'd like to speak to more European investigators in regards to the paranormal on the continent and cryptids and things like that. And the main thing is to get my bloody book finished, I think.
I was not aware you were writing a book. What is the topic? Forgive me for being so... It's
about extremely well-reported poltergeist cases that have completely dropped off the radar.
Oh, how cool.
So these are... I mean, ironically, the case that started all this was when I was recovering from my attempt to take my own life at the beginning of 2018. And as part of my recovery, I was off work. And so when I somehow managed to wake up and still be here somehow. I just thought, right, I've spent too long not being who I should be. It's time I embraced it, because my brother had been on at me for years to do a podcast, because he said, you know, more than most of these people, you should do it, you'd be brilliant at it. And I kept saying, nah. And then that all happened, and so as part of my recuperation, I was off work for a couple of weeks, and then I was on like phased return, we call it at our place. So I was basically working
we have this
3 hours a day for 6 or 7 weeks, and slowly went back to full time.
Yeah.
And so as part of that, I just started rereading all the books. Back in those days, I only had about a dozen books about the paranormal. I wish I'd only got a dozen now. Fucking hell. I could build talking about the housing crisis, I could build a home out of one, I think. Now, as I touch 650, I've got now.
Jesus.
So it was just diving that, and so I started to reread the John and Anne Spencer collections that were like massive. They were, you know, they sold ridiculous amounts of copies because they were usually as part of the Reader's Digest collections. And so I think the first one of theirs sold 500,000 copies, and the second one sold 600,000, which is unheard of these days in a paranormal book.
It really is.
And so, and there was this case about, not too far from your neck of the woods, Kev, about a poltergeist in Runcorn.
Oh, I know of the Runcorn poltergeist. Yeah.
And I read this, and I thought, this is crazy. Why do I not know about this case? So I cross-referenced all my poltergeist books, and it's mentioned in 2 of them. And I thought, what has this been has it been proven to be a fake? Is it a hoax? Was it all a sham? And the more I dove into it, the more I've just began to scratch my head and think, what has gone on here? Why is this case? Because it was so big. It was on the BBC. It was on the front page of the weekly paper for 3.5 months as it went on.
Yeah,
Life magazine flew in from the States and did a whole 6-7 page article on the whole thing. You know, for a company in America to fly over to the UK and go to Runcorn, of all places, in the mid-50s.
I wouldn't go to Runcorn now, and I'm 10 minutes away.
And so I just thought, well, what can we do with this? And so I just thought, well, what the hell? So I just emailed the local library, and a wonderfully named librarian called Jenny Tickle, I think her name was, emailed me back and said, oh yeah, we've got all the newspaper files here. Anytime you want to come over, just drop us a line and we'll get everything set up for you. And that was that. And so that's always been there over the last 3 or 4 years. I wrote most of it about, I don't know, when I first started, before I did the show, and then I scrapped it all because I just thought it was crap. And so I've just tried to keep dicking away at it to get it through, but without sort of rushing it. So I'm not stressed about it, but I think I'm now in a position where I am hopeful it will be out next year before the end of the summer.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I genuinely hope you get it done because I think it'd be absolutely a great piece of work.
And then I can get really annoyed about going on shows where the interviewer hasn't read it.
yeah. Or mispronounces it. I love that when I go on a show and they go, we got Kev on from Let's Talk About Ghosts. And I said, no, it's We Need to Talk About Ghosts. It's playing We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Yeah. Like, I get my name mispronounced in real life quite a lot, but in the podcasting field, most people are able. I don't understand how the word Bestall is so hard to pronounce, but
no.
You'll be amazed. So yeah, that's probably what I'm doing, and then maybe introduce Brennan to Backsack and Cracking next year.
I don't think that is going to be an issue. That's not happening. This far and no further.
Yeah, they all say that.
And that is how you bring in 2025. Is that the year we go? What year are we in? I honestly don't know. Are we in 23 or 24?
It's going to be 2024. It's been hilarious. You've said 2025 a few times. It's like, no, it's fine. We'll just let it go. He knows what he means.
I have no idea where I am, honest to God.
Next year's Blade Runner year.
Does that mean 24 or 25?
2024 is the year Blade Runner's set.
Oh, is it? Is it 2024 next year? Oh, well, that's good. I've gained a year. Well, I like it when that happens.
We've all got to dress like Descartes.
Becca's stepmom bought me a lovely Tau, Padre Pio Tau from the Vatican Museum. And it like a little bracelet, very faint, very delicate, beautiful thing. And I lost it. So I bought a Tau from Amazon, and it was engraved with Latin, a beautiful thing. And I bought a bracelet for it to go with. Anyway, it arrived. Should I say 10 of them arrived, and they're about 5 inches long each. So, like, you couldn't even if you wore it as a necklace, it looked friggin' daft. So, if anyone is in need of 10 massive Padre Pio Taus, you just let me know.
Get them unvinted.
Yeah, should they? Yeah. I'll say the cast. That'll knock the value up.
Oh, you'll be laughing then.
All right. Well, we should start heading towards the exit here, folks. Although, Kev, I don't know that we've really talked about your plans for 2024.
To be honest, mate, I'm going to look a bit more into video podcasting, more freeform. My goal is I want to reduce the amount of admin work, and I want to have more conversations with people. So like we've just spoke, like what we've done here, there's no script, there's no nothing. You just had a gab, you press end, you're done. And get to know people, talk about things, but it's all up in the air what I'm planning on doing and how I'm going about doing it. And just the other thing is try and engage a bit more with social media because I'm utterly shite at it. And try and get some sort of game plan in place. So if I see it, as I say, if it says you have one new message, I'm like, bollocks now. Whereas I should be going, oh, that's nice, someone wants to interact with the show. But I don't, because I automatically think bad feedback.
Oh yeah, sure. No, I understand that absolutely. It's usually because it's me sending you mean messages.
It is, yeah. So it's block Brennan more is my plan for 24.
Yeah, I mean that's
t-shirts in the making.
Yeah.
I still owe you a Goat Story Guys shirt.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, Goat Story.
All right, guys. Well, this has been our Christmas wild and woolly conversation show. We've been recording for a while. I'm going to edit the hell out of it over the next couple days, but even so, this has been just a fabulous conversation. It's our last episode for 2023. And so I just want to take a moment, of course, to thank our friend and our colleague, Kev Eustace, for hanging out with us, not only on this episode, but on the other shows throughout the year.
Utter pleasure, mate. Absolute anytime, because I think he's a both diamonds, so always a charm.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I'm also going to thank Paul Bestel for being the best friend and co-host the guy could ask for. I genuinely could not do this show without you, would not want to do the show without you, so thank you.
Every show's a pleasure, finding out what weird films we both love on a weekly basis, and just seeing how much you glow, baby.
It's my La Roche-Posay facial cream.
That's the way.
That's how you sign off a show. Bloody hell.
That's it. All right, and I just want to thank our audience for tuning in this last year. Again, you guys are wonderful. There wouldn't be any point to making a show without you out there listening, and it is an honor and a privilege to bring you a show every week that you find spooky and that you laugh at, that you find inspiring. So thank you for hanging out with us this past year, and I hope we can we both intend to keep bringing you the same high level of quality programming and hopefully improve upon that in 2024 or 2025. More demons. Yeah, more demons.
More demons.
I want to thank Jerry Smith, who is, of course, our composer, Rainy Days for Ghosts. He's also on our record label, Night Harvest Recordings. You can find Jerry's music streaming everywhere as Rainy Days for Ghosts or as Street Witch. And Jerry's going to have his own YouTube show coming up soon through a network. It's going to be an interview show, as I understand it. But he's been a little bit secretive on details there, so I don't have any like confirmed dates. But as soon as I do, we'll post it up on our socials, and you can hear Jerry talking to some of the greats. And of course, I want to thank Luke Greensmith, host of the Luke Lore podcast. Luke has been with us since essentially year 2. And has been with me and is an invaluable part of this show. He helps find our stories sometimes, and like I said, hosts Luke Lore and is just a great dude. And yeah, watching him grow as a folklore. This show sounds like I'm dying, but that's not it. I'm just like thanking everyone. But no, just watching him grow as a folklorist, and he's got some amazing stuff coming up next year that is all the direct result of him becoming the folklorist of note, and just is a direct result of the work he's put in on that show. So again, thank you to Luke. I want to thank Sarah Kent. Sarah handles our Reddit, and she's a wonderful person who has continued to do this despite the fact I am shit at keeping in touch. And so thank you to Sarah for managing the Reddit community. Thank you to Tanya Downing. Tanya is fucking incredible. Tanya came on board late this year. She has just made my life so much easier by taking some of the editing off my hands, and that has been wonderful. And also by starting the Facebook page, then the Facebook group, we've seen such growth in that group. It's been wonderful. That would not have happened without Tanya, because much like Kev says, I am bad at keeping track of messages. I kind of go whenever I see one come in, and Tanya has been invaluable in keeping that community going. So thank you to her. Thank you to Adam Lynch from Weekly Creep. Adam has taken up our video editing. So if you've ever seen our YouTube channel with me and Paul doing the video stories, that is a direct result of Adam's help. Adam edits all of that. And so again, we would not have any video content without Adam Lynch. So thank you to Adam. And of course, don't forget to check out the Weekly Creep podcast, which he co-hosts with Dulce. last and not at all least, I want to thank Joseph Camo. Joseph is, of course, my friend and co-host of the Weird Together podcast. Without Joseph, we would not have a functioning YouTube account, and we would not have the video content that Adam edits. Joseph came on board in 2021, might have been 2022. I think it was 2022. But we met through this show, and he offered, because he had some success with the Cardinal Rule and continues to on YouTube, he offered to help us turn around the YouTube ship, and now we have a monetized YouTube. We have actual video content. That all happened because of Joseph coming to me and saying, hey, I can help you with this. And so thank you to him. And don't forget to check out his show, The Cardinal Rule. He's also part of AZ Sports Underground, which is a sports journalism site dedicated to Arizona sports. So big thanks to Joseph. And I hope to Christ I didn't miss anyone. I don't think I did. I think that is everyone. It has been a wild 2023, and I'm excited for 2024. And if I did forget anyone, I'm sorry. And to everyone who's been in the past, thank you for getting us this far. In the words of the great Bob Dylan, my heart is not weary, it is light and it's free. I've got nothing but affection for those who sail with me. So thank you to everyone who's helped us get this far. Onwards into the future, onwards into 2024 or 2025 if you're living in Liverpool right now, apparently.
Yeah, it's quite futuristic. It's not been the same since Eurovision.
Time Slip City, baby.
That's why we're going to win Eurovision next year.
This is it.
All right, so we will be back we'll be back on January 2nd with a Book of the Dead episode, and then we will officially be back with a main show on January 9th. It's the 6th if you're a patron. So, until then, take care of yourselves, have a safe holidays, and Paul, why don't you say it this time?
Into the darkness we go.